Howdy folks, Dave here at Thunder Mesa Studio with a small project today for the ON30 Thunder Mesa Mining Company layout. And when I say small, I mean small. As I was working on Coyote Canyon last week, I also kept looking at this scene over here, which is directly adjacent to it. And this is the scene around the Thunder Mesa Mill. Now, of course, this structure here is still a mock-up, and eventually I will get to building the actual mill, because this is where all of the ore from all of Thunder Mesa country comes to be processed. And now that it's over here on the other side of the aisle from where the town will be located, it makes sense that there should be some sort of small depot or station platform or passenger shelter for miners or mill workers or whoever needs to come over here from town. And that got my wheels turning. That's right, today I'm going to be building this little passenger shelter, which is based on a design from the popular 1960s television show Petticoat Junction. Back a few years ago when my friend Jake Johnson and I were designing kits for Crescent Creek models, we kept an ongoing file of modeling ideas, R&D file. One that was in there that I really liked that we never got around to producing was this little passenger shelter. Not a full depot, just a little flag stop passenger shelter. A very small little platform with a roof and a sign on it. That's about it. And it was from the old television show Petticoat Junction, which many of you may know was filmed up on the, partially filmed, up on the Sierra Railroad in California. And Jake had a bunch of pictures of that, and we thought, you know, that would make a pretty cool little kit. Like I said, we never got around to producing it, but I still have all the photos, so I thought, you know, that would be ideal for the little spot over here in Big Thunder. So I sat down at my desk and I designed some laser cut parts based on that Shady Rest passenger shelter. And this is what I came up with. It's going to be built mostly from some 1/16 of an inch thick MDF. And then I've got some 35 1/1000th of an inch thick laser board for some more detailed pieces and some chipboard for the roof. It probably took about the same amount of time to design these pieces in Adobe Illustrator, then cut them on the laser, as it's going to take to actually put the whole structure together. When you design what is essentially a kit like this for yourself, obviously there are no instructions that come with it. But I think the first thing I want to do is put this little platform base together. Got a little carpenter's glue here. Start building. Now these side pieces basically represent what would probably be 12 by 12 timbers that the deck would be built on top of, but obviously it's just the side edge there. And I have them going and overlapping this MDF piece because I don't want the edges of this to show. This is going to be decked with real wood. I'll use probably some coffee stir sticks for that. So that is the first sub-assembly, and we'll set that aside to dry for a minute or two. And then the next thing is going to be these uprights. Now these are cut from some 1/16 MDF, and the whole purpose of this is to create these brackets. Now I could have cut these brackets separately and then, you know, glued them onto a 6x6, but this is going to be much, much stronger. So instead of, you know, having a 6x6 here, I'll take this 1/16 MDF and put a piece of this laser board on each side, which is cut precisely to fit. And that will thicken it out to what will look like a 6x6 when the whole thing's painted. So there's one of these pieces of laser board on each side. The interior one has a slot here, and that slot will receive the back of the bench seat. It's always important with this kind of layered sandwich construction to get things lined up as perfectly as you possibly can. Now the other one. Find a toothpick is handy for removing any glue blobs that hang over. Now we can let those dry for a minute. Now I can put these three little sub-assemblies together. These uprights fit right down into these square holes. Just got to make sure that the slot for the bench back is on the inside. I'll use my little machinist square here to make sure these guys are standing up straight as the glue dries. Next I want to glue in the seat back. This is some 35 1/1000th of an inch thick laser board, and it does have a top and a bottom. The top is a little bit thicker than the bottom side. And since this is flexible, I can put it into one slot at a time. Kind of just bend it a little bit, and that just fits in those slots. Next, there are some trim pieces that go on the seat back, top and bottom. The wider one goes on the top, and then the thinner one goes on the bottom. And that is repeated on both sides of the seat back. Now I can start on the roof assembly. And this part's a little tricky because I need to glue these beams on here. I measured in 5/32 on each side. That's how much they need to overhang for the roof to be centered. And it's just a butt glue joint here. Make sure that's flush with the top of that T-bracket. You get both of them on there. You can kind of clamp it with your fingers from each side till that glue sets up. And then these rafter pieces get glued in to the slots in this top ridge beam. And that's going to remain a little bit flexible, so I can get all these on here and then position it on top of this assembly. Now all of this goes on top of all of that. This is just one of those little nerve-wracking assemblies. There's a lot of things that have to happen correctly at the same time. All of these slots need to line up with these beams. And then these rafters need to be the proper distance apart. They're on 24-inch centers, so that's ½ an inch. That's easy. Make some fine adjustments here as the glue starts to set up. The bench itself I need to build separately because it has to sit up on top of the decking. So I finished this. I'm going to paint all this. Going to build the bench, or at least the base of the bench, as a second sub-assembly, paint all that, put the decking in, and then put everything together. Make sense? First thing are these little X braces for the legs, kind of like a picnic table. Not sure this is 100% accurate, but from the photos I have, this was as near as I could figure out. So there are 3 sets of legs and then this central beam that goes right down the middle. And we need to find the middle of this. Perfect. Now this assembly is pretty fragile, so I'm going to add the bench seat just on one side. Then I'll be able to slip it through here and then add the slats on the other side. Finish it off. Now I'm going to take all of these pieces and assemblies and get some paint on them. And the paint I'm going to use is some Rust-Oleum camouflage, kind of a light buff color. While I wait for that paint to dry, I can cut and stain all the pieces for the decking. These are some coffee stir sticks I picked up at Hobby Lobby. I like these. These are a little thinner. A lot of the ones I get are about a scale foot wide. These are a scale 9 inches, so those should work nicely. They're nice and long too, so I get about 3 planks out of each one. And I've got my chopper set up here to cut each one about 2 3/8 of an inch long. That should be enough. The platform is only a little over 12 scale feet long. Now I want to distress each one of these with my razor saw. Give it the look of wood that's been out in the weather for a while. The thing I like about using coffee stir sticks is they're very imperfect. Some of them are bent. They're not, consistent thickness. Some will be thicker than others. Some will be thinner. So you're going to get a much more, funky kind of home-built look with these than you would with, dimensional basswood, which is all usually very perfect. And to stain these, I like to put down a little pad of paper towels. I'm using my shoe dye and rubbing alcohol mixture. This is just 70% isopropyl alcohol with a few drops of black kiwi shoe dye in it. I also have some brown here. I'm going to mix things up a little bit. Some of them I'm going to use both on. And that just has the effect of warming the color a little bit. Gives it a little bit more variety. Not going to do it on every one. I always stain both sides, even though only one side of this is going to show. And that's to prevent warping, mostly. And also it gives me a choice. When I go to apply these, I can, I often turn them over and say, oh, which is the better side? Which side looks better for this spot? Okay, now we're just waiting for stuff to dry. Well, now that kind of buff color is reasonably dry, coming back and brush painting on this is some apple barrel marsh green. Now the Petticoat Junction passenger shelter is pretty much all white, but since this is the Thunder Mesa layout, I wanted this to have a family resemblance with the Thunder Mesa Depot and the Rainbow Ridge Depot, which both have a lot of green in them. So just a little green on the bench itself. Now I can start planking the deck. And that's pretty straightforward. The only little wrinkle is I need to cut a little notch for the upright post on each side. But once that's done, just start laying them on here one by one. Something like this, where I'm gluing these down to a painted surface, I prefer to use a glue like, say, Eileen's Tacky Glue, rather than yellow wood glue, because you're going to get a better bond on that painted surface than you would with carpenter's glue. Now that I'm about halfway across, I'm going to flip the model around and start from the other side. So I'll meet in the middle. That way, if there's any, odd sized pieces I need to cut to fit, they'll be closer to the middle and not out on the edges. Just notching this to fit around that post. Now this last piece, I had to cut it pretty skinny in order for it to fit. But that's going to look better here in the middle than it will fallen off out on the edges. And now I want to paint the top of the bench seat the same green. I'm going to leave the legs that lighter tan color. Usually takes 2 coats with this stuff. Fortunately, it dries really fast, so it doesn't take that long. Now, before I install the rest of the bench on the model, I'm going to take some fine sandpaper and go over this decking a little bit. This hits the high spots and makes it look like it's worn from many, many years of foot traffic. Kind of randomize it, do it. Press a little harder in some places than in others. Particularly when I get these edges. Now I can apply a light smear of glue to the bottom of these legs. I should be able to just slide this in between the uprights, but I'm sliding it in above the deck so that I'm not going to, trail glue across the floor there. Slide it all the way in and then press it down. And apply a little bit more glue up here, and I can put the seat planks in place on this side. I think that's working. Now I'm just adding the look of some nail holes on the tops of these planks where they would be nailed down to that 12 by 12 underneath. This is my nail hole creation tool. Basically, we just a track nail in a pin vise. Works great for O scale. Might be a little big for the smaller scales. On these chipboard roof panels, I etched the underside to look like planks, but I didn't do anything on the top side. And I want to add some shake shingles, so I've got to draw some guidelines here. I want to use shake shingles so it'll match the other depots on the line. The way I do this, the bottommost one is 3/8 of an inch to the bottom, and then the rest of the lines are 3/16 of an inch apart. And that gives me a good realistic overlap with most brands of laser cut shingles you can get. I'm going to be using Bar Mills paper shingles on this. And I wanted to get this done right now because the next step is going to be gluing these roof panels onto the model. And to do that, I'm diluting some Eileen's tacky glue with just a little bit of water, just enough to make it so I can apply it with a small brush to the tops of these rafters. And I'll put some along the top edge of the roof panel. And that just lines up with that ridge beam. And the same thing again on this side. With these printed paper shingles, I always like to take and cut a little strip off of the sheet. This is actually the waste piece once the shingles are removed. A little strip that's about 1/8 of an inch wide. And what this is for is a starter strip. Put this on the very edge of the roof, and that way that bottom layer of shingles will be lifted up a little bit, and that's a kind of realistic look that you want. If you just glued it right flat on here, it wouldn't look as good. And to apply these, I prefer to use just good old-fashioned white glue. Put it on the topmost edge, lay it on there. And the next one, following those lines we put on. These are Bar Mills paper shingles that I'm using right now, but these techniques work the same for just about any other printed paper laser cut shingles. Wild West scale models has some, Berkshire Valley models has some. Now the same thing on the other side. Now I can just trim the extra off of the ends. There we go. Now I want some cap shingles on the end. So I'll just cut a couple of wide pairs off of the strip and fold them over. A little bit of glue down in the crease. And that goes right there like that. The crest of the roof is going to have a station sign. So I'm going to put a length of 2x4 right here for that to sit on top of. Then on either side of that, overlapping the shingles, the tops of the shingles, I've got a 1x6, which I've stained to match the color of the shingles. For the sign itself, I did cut a sign board out of laser board, but I don't think I'm going to use it because by the time I get the printed paper signs on here, it's going to be a little bit too thick, I think. So I'm going to take the printed paper signs that I made. I designed these in Adobe Photoshop to fit within these frames. I'm just going to cut one of them out. Now, this is designed to be two-sided, so I'm going to score it down the middle. And then I can fold it over. I don't want this to wrinkle up, so I'm not going to use white glue. I'm going to spray the back of it with some of this Super 77 spray adhesive. Now I can fold this over and it should stick to itself. Now I'm carefully brushing some white glue on the back of these frames. And we'll put one on each side. Using white glue here so I can have a little bit of working time to make fine adjustments. Make sure I've got that on there, as perfectly as I can. And now the other side. Now this gets glued in here right between these two upright posts. And I'll just touch up the top edge of the sign here with a little bit of apple barrel khaki, which is very, very close to the kind of light tan buff color that we painted the whole depot. Now I'm ready to do a little bit of weathering. Got some apple barrel antique white to start off with. I'm going to use that to weather this everything that's kind of tan colored. Got a stiff brush, wiping about 99.9% of the paint off on a piece of corrugated cardboard, and then just dry brushing on. And this is going to help to bring out all the little details while adding a little bit of age to everything. Then I'll take some of this granite gray, do the same thing on the bench. Make it look like lots of people have sat on this over the years. Particularly want to hit the edges. That's where it's going to show the most wear. And then it's time to break out the colored chalks for the roof. And mostly what I'm going for here is kind of a dirty gray. Use a lighter tone to put some streaks in here and there. Don't forget the sign. I find this helps an awful lot with these laser cut printed paper shingles, just to go over them with some chalks. Really makes them look a lot more realistic. Then, we can always do the old trick of lifting some of the shingles up here and there, kind of bending them up like that. That's the reason I only apply glue to the top edge, so you can come back and do something like this. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. So now I'll lock all that in place with a spray of my clear matte finish. Now that I have the flag up, I need some passengers to be waiting for the next train. Got a minor figure here. Maybe he just got off work. I believe he is a lifelike figure that I repainted a few years ago. Let's give him a lunchbox. Put that right there. And then we have a refugee from Hanging Rock. This is Angel Eyes. He was waiting for the train in Hanging Rock forever. Never did pick him up. Probably knew he was nothing but trouble. Now he's going to be waiting for the train here in Big Thunder. He's got a little valise here. Now Angel Eyes is a figure from Knuckle Duster Miniatures. Now this is the spot where I want the structure to go. I've scraped the scenery back just a little bit. And I don't want to glue the structure down here permanently. So I'm going to put a couple of little positioning blocks in place. And this is just some 4x6. I've carefully measured so when the structure comes in, it'll just key right down on top of those. That's the theory anyway. If you look real closely here on the sign, you'll see that it says Thunder Mesa 6 miles that way, and Rainbow Ridge there's 17 miles the other way. I think I'll put my water tank right about there, so when the spout would be lower to be right over the main line. This is an old Banta Model Works kit, by the way, for their branch line water tank. I built several of these. This one I modified with a conical roof. Other than that, it's pretty much stock. When you have structures that are trackside like this, you really have to pay close attention to the clearances. Make sure that your rolling stock is all going to clear. I have a diverging route going off this way, and that could cause problems with this corner if the structure is not back far enough. So I took some careful measurements to make sure that nothing's going to whack the roof there as it goes by. Got about a foot or so of clearance on there. Now I'll come back later and dirt all this in and really finish up this scene right. Probably when I finally get around to building that mill back there. Well, building that was every bit as much fun as I thought it would be, and I think it's a good reminder that a huge, often overwhelming project like reimagining the Thunder Mesa layout is actually made up of a whole bunch of little projects like this one. I hope you enjoyed it too. I want to thank you all so much for watching today. And if it's your first time here, I hope you'll subscribe and hit that notification bell so YouTube will let you know when the next video is coming from Thunder Mesa Studio. In the meantime, you can also follow us over on Instagram at thunder.mesa and see what's happening on the Thunder Mesa Studio website at thundermesa.studio. As always, a huge shout out and thank you to our members who help to make these videos possible. Until next time, keep moving forward, my friends. Adios for now.